Okay, we got two things today to do today while everyone's here, which is good opportunity to talk about the next step in your original reporting assignment, the last step, which will be to take the television package that some folks will be reading out for us today, to take it and adapt it, transform it so that it will work as a web page. So that assignment is due on November 14th. That's 12 days from today. So the web package, again, it's based on your original reporting that you did for the radio feature and now for the television package. So same original interview. You can go back to it for additional information if you want. Or you can work just from the radio feature, the TV package in your adaptation. You should have enough in there. And this thing grows a little bit every time. For the television package, we asked you to add a second source to your reporting, whether it was a written source for more contextual information or another interview was up to you and dependent on your type of story, how much you wanted to do. Next step is we're going to ask you to add, let's see, interactive features of your choice and also a kind of a side story, if you want. A story that is related, short, related to your main story that you've been working on, but just that provides another angle or other information that your audience might be interested in knowing about. Now, very frequently when you're reporting on something, you find yourself obliged to leave something interesting out of the main feature that you're writing because it just isn't part of the focus that you're working on. So this is an opportunity to take something like that, if it has arisen, to write a separate piece related to the main story, but not the main story, a shorter thing. So that'll give you that opportunity to write a little bit more, to give more context, or perhaps profile somebody else who's involved. And again, either it may be something that came up in your reporting that you thought was interesting, but you had to leave out, or it may be responding to what you anticipate is an audience question. Once they've read your piece about, nuclear energy, maybe they would be interested in knowing how many reactors there are in California or something like that. And so it might not fit with the general direction of your feature, but aside as an additional story, it would work. So that is one thing to add to the web package. The other thing is to try to take advantage in some way of the interactive features provided by the web, which would include links to other important information that you could embed in your story. Okay. Here we go. Baseball season's over as far as I know. And let's see, what else? We have a list of interactive features anyway. We'll talk next week in lecture about apps that can help you do a timeline. If you have a story which unfolds over a period of time, an interactive timeline could be useful. Also, if you have a story which happens in a geographic area, so if it would be helpful to have a map to know what's going on, we will look over how to create interactive maps in Google Maps. Examples of stuff that have drawn on that comes to mind. Cole Calvo, who was a student a couple of years ago, was working on a story about club venues closing down for punk music. That was his thing. And so he was directing people to other locations like people's garages and stuff where pretty regular music events would happen. And so he made an interactive map of that, which worked out very nicely because you can put layers on top of something like that and put additional information onto the map. So give a thought as to, you only have to come up with one option with one interactive element that you feel would, make your story interesting on the web. And in lecture next week, we'll be going over lots of different options. And of course, you guys all use the web. You've seen all sorts of features, good or not that are out there. So asking you to put some of that in there. This is not obviously the full lecture on what we're doing, but I want to give enough information now so that those who are streaming are just able to, ask questions now and pick this up at home on their own if that's how they're going to do it. So there is plenty of stuff to clarify here. So let's try to make it clear, right? The objectives of this assignment are based on observations that when you work in a television station or a radio station now, everything you do is going to wind up on the web at some point, within hours of broadcast usually. So your day, even working at a local television station, would not end with preparing your package for broadcast on the 6 o'clock news, because you'd then have to go and adapt it to reside on the web, probably with some of the video footage that you used as B-roll, but maybe not. What we're going to learn about is, quick techniques for adapting a story that was written for package, so a story with both audio and video, how to adapt it quickly to live basically as interactive text on the web, multimedia as well. You could have photographs, you could have video, so on and so forth. So there are some considerations that you may not have thought about yet, but which are pretty clearly put out in Chapter 6 of the textbook. So that's our go-to resource here. So next week we'll be talking about this in class, and for the 14th you'll be adapting your story and adding little bits and pieces, as I mentioned, to come up with a web package, which is just for the web. Now, you don't have to produce this for the web. In other words, it doesn't have to be submitted in HTML. If you happen to be handy with blogging software like WordPress or something like that, which many of our students are, you could produce this, either that or as a static web page. So what I'm saying is not required, but if you have the skills to put this into HTML, great. If you don't, all of this could be submitted to me in a Word document or a Google Docs document. That's okay too. So just don't be fooled. Every time I say, and it should be on the web, you don't have to go and make a web page, right? The summary of this assignment then is rewrite and expand your TV package, add depth and detail, right? Because now that we're on the web, we no longer have the constraints of time that broadcast would impose on us, where we could only have 2.5 minutes for our package, and we don't have constraints about space because we're not publishing on paper, so it can run as long as we want. We can have as many pages as we want. That's not an issue. So the web is really great for depth and detail. It's also great, by the way, for having the latest information. So if there are any updates to your story, I don't think anybody's writing anything that is particularly, breaking or moment by moment, but another reason people go to the web is to get the latest information. That's their expectation. So you could always update. And of course, you can have multimedia and interactive elements that your newspaper or your television, your basic television broadcast couldn't have. So that would be really cool. So that's what we'll be doing. Interesting thing, if your TV package aired at 6 o'clock, you'd have a couple of audiences at least in mind. The people who'd already seen it on the broadcast who are coming to you for additional information, and the people who've never seen it at all, but who happen to come to the local TV station webpage because that's where they go for news sometimes. So two different audiences, one that already knows plenty about it because they've seen your piece already, the other who knows nothing about it. And so you have to keep in mind that that's why we're adding additional information to satisfy the folks who are coming in after seeing the package. But we're also rewriting the package into a textual form for those who've never seen it, so that you're taking advantage of your reporting and all the work that went before. So some of the strategies we'll be talking about next week clarify or go a little deeper into that. So what are we submitting for this assignment? Again, all of this could be on Microsoft Word document or something like that. Let's just go here and looking, these become very, very, very visual. Is there any text up here? Is there, amazing, huh? Okay. Interesting. There's just so many of them, that's all. Let's try a different, they're pretty far ahead on the curve of eliminating all text, aren't they? That's where we could go. Okay, this is a little more old school. That's what I was expecting to see. First off, when you're going to access one of their stories, you'll probably have an image, a headline. This one's linkable. You may also have, if we go further down here, a blurb, I would call that, of about 50 words or so. Okay, so title, blurb, maybe a headline, some combination of that. So the first thing I'll ask you to do in this assignment is to submit, here it says, a summary blurb for the web news item with a strong headline. 50 words for the blurb, all right? So again, that's why we're all here today, clarifying this. This is the headline, this is the blurb, okay? And you see the point of it when people land on your web page. They have a wide variety of stories that they could click on. So your goal is to get them to click on your story with a good headline and a blurb that makes sense, right? And some stations which care about search engine optimization and stuff will make sure that even in Google search results, the headline and at least the start of the blurb will show up. And of course, machines are also looking through here, picking out keywords and stuff. So next week we'll talk a little bit about that. It's largely automated and uses plugins, but we can also just think about, okay, what are the keywords that, someone's searching for my story, what keywords would be there? So this is important also to think about here. So that's the first item on my list. You need a summary blurb for the station website. And you want to let people know what your story is about with the headline and just pull them into the story, right? This may be adapted from the lead of your piece as well. Doing many things at once. Because you're under pressure, you're trying to do this fast, right? So next up, the web news story, about 450 words or more. So it contains the text of your story that was in the television package and the radio feature, but it's adapted for the web. So just quickly, whereas a lot of our stories, depending on the models you use, I always used to prefer the diamond, but the textbook also speaks about a circular structure for broadcast story. Both of them sort of begin usually with quite a specific incident or character, and then they broaden out to talk about the greater issue that is in question in this story. And maybe at the end they'll come back to something quite detailed again to provide a certain amount of narrative closure. This is the typical broadcast structure, right? You're going to rewrite into an inverted pyramid format, which is very comfortable for you folks who are, done a lot of print journalism. Maybe less familiar for broadcast writers. So you'll look through your package and change structure accordingly with a summary lead here, and the summary lead may be part of your part of that summary blurb that you got in there too. So in addition to doing the rewrite, and we'll talk more in a second or two, is this probably not written into the assignment. As you go through your TV package, of course, it's written in 2 columns, and there was visual information that will no longer be carried over to the web version, which is primarily textual. You will have to think about, okay, in my TV package, I conveyed the extent of the destruction due to the wildfire with pictures. I could show all of these leveled buildings and somebody's bicycle melted. I can't do that. I'm going to have to turn some of that into descriptive text. And so as you go through, first thing to do is look at your SOTs as well. They're basically quotes. So pull out the SOTs, put quotations around them, and then look at the video information and start describing it. And then you have to decide, well, how much do I need here? How descriptive is this? Like, am I going to have like 2 paragraphs or 1? So these are quick ways of adaptations. Pull out the SOTs, turn them into quotes. Look at the video. What do you need to turn into descriptive language? Take your lead, which might be kind of soft, turn it into a summary lead. Make sure that your most important information is early up, packed in the story, and as you come down to the greater details at the bottom. Okay? Another thing we'll demonstrate and talk about next week is that writing for the web uses paragraphs that are very short, maybe 2-3 sentences maximum. Okay? Maybe even shorter paragraphs than print. And they're set off in chunks. Okay? And there's research actually done of people reading pages where they scan the way their eyes move. And people tend to enter into, different places in a story depending on what they're interested in, right? And so you should write in short 2-3 sentence paragraphs. You should not go more than 2-3 of those paragraphs before you have a heading, like basically a line, a headline within the story, if you want, that announces what's going on in the next few paragraphs. That's because readers, scan and they look for those headings and say, oh, okay, that's what I'm interested in. They start in there. Okay. And remember, people have seen your package already, so maybe they're just there to find out more about when that meeting is going to be. So you give them good headlines, they can go in, find out what they need. All right, so again, we'll remind that, but so this should be written in web writing style. Short paragraphs, 1 or 2 sentences, split into subsections with easy to understand headlines. Don't make your headlines clickbaity and seductive. Make them just really clear so that people scanning know where they're going. Again, keep your conversational language, your active verbs, check your spelling and stuff. No problems there, all right? And then at the bottom, the first step of interactive features is just providing links to additional web resources. You may embed them in the text, or you may just keep them to the end. So that's what we're looking for in terms of the adaptation of the TV package. Any questions while we're going on? Yeah, Shannon?
Would you want to rewrite every single thing, or if there's lines from, let's say, your TV package that work, can you transfer them over?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So some of it could be a copy paste, and some of it is as in terms of extracting the SOTs, putting quotations around them. That you're definitely going to keep.
And then do we want to make it less conversational, or is it okay to keep the tone?
I think it's better to keep the tone myself. If one of the great things, and we were looking at some examples from the NBC investigative team, and we'll look at them again because those are, information-laden packages. They're out there 6 minutes long, 8 minutes long. They're showing documents. They're discussing statistics. They are at the limit of what television can do in terms of providing information in a television format. But, if we look at their website, again, NBC Investigates Bay Area, you can see they've got, beautiful web pages filled full of graphics and stuff. So, and they don't change the tone either. You can pretty much see what they're doing. Yeah. When you rewrite new stuff, all I'm saying with that is if you have to be precise and use jargon of the, of whatever story you're working with, then go ahead and do it. You've got the space to explain yourself now, and you can be more precise because, people can go back and reread a little section if they, if it turns out to be, you've got to tell them something really quite specific and involved. You can do it. Okay, so we talked. You need the summary. At least one multimedia element, typically a photo. So this could be a photo or audio or video that you would use. Again, pardon me. You can don't waste your time. Go to Google Images and just search an image. You don't need an original image. You don't need to worry about, getting permission. But what we're talking about is this, and obviously not a whole lot of effort goes into this, but, think of what would be a useful image to carry your story. Yeah, Shannon?
Maybe it doesn't work for the purposes of this assignment, but would you want to include like the video of your TV package on the webpage?
Some of them do, yeah. Of course, there's no need for us to do that because we already did it. But yeah, some of them would do that. Others will provide just raw footage, so you could get like a 20-minute reel of burning houses in Sonoma and stuff like that. They'll put that up, just raw. Shannon?
NPR will put verbatim what was in the radio package.
Transcript?
If they do a video package, then they'll transcribe that too. But I think that they wanted to have it parallel, so that whether you read your news or listen to it, you're getting the same information.
Okay.
So sometimes they do
exactly that, yeah. And then how do they handle like the visual information that's missing?
I haven't
put a
turned it
screenshot?
on in a while, but they have the visual descriptions.
Okay.
The text crawlers that read for visual.
Oh, okay.
They do those for inline stuff that they have.
All right. Do you think that's automated? Do you think that's like, how do they do that? No, somebody actually has to go and type all that in?
When we take all that time to tag our stuff, like the people on the back end will go through and basically do that, but deeper for everything.
Cool. Well, there's a job. What job? What would you call that? Is that like a web editor's job or something?
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's probably a content producer or something, how they say it now.
Oh, okay.
But I think it would be considered a production job, not a writing job.
Yeah. Is that a different union? We can find out more. We should find out more. Okay. But just a picture. Everyone know how to search for pictures on Google Images and stuff?
Yeah.
Of course. Of course.
Please explain.
Did I hear an honest what? Do we need to? I don't think so. Okay. All right. Anyone who wants to know about that, just hang out afterwards. Okay, just Google it, right?
But for this purpose, any photos of Kate are not going to be.
That's right. You don't have to look for like Creative Commons licensed or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But one of our alumna working at KLW was just telling us, telling me, us. I'm now a plural. Multiple personalities. So I brought my 4 personalities to a cafe. She was saying that they have recently formalized their format for citation and image credits and stuff like that. So before they didn't have a standardized format for the sourcing of their photos and stuff like that. Now they do, like exactly how it has to be out there for every single image, which is I think it makes any news outlet look more serious when everything is to format, but it's also, I think, legally better because it just, for everybody contributing, they know exactly what information has to be up there, and if they did their job right, a photo credit will never be missing, and so no one could ever come after KLW and say, why didn't you give credit for my photo, etc. So those things are oddly important. And still being worked out even, in some venerable institutions. Shannon?
This might be common knowledge, but I just found this out for future projects where you do need like Creative Commons photos or stuff that you can use freely. There's a filter on the Google image search for that, which has been super helpful.
Oh, good, great. Yeah, and you can also go to CC Search, which is kind of like an aggregator here, and then you could say, Sonoma Fire. I don't know how good it is. And then you can click off and you say, I want something I can use for commercial purposes. No, but something I could modify, adapt, or build on. And then you can search Flickr, or you could search Google Google Images, and it works for audio as well. So this is a good site too. So if you go to Google Images, those filters that Shannon was talking on would already be activated there. So the filter carries over into this, right? So if you're wondering, a strategy to get, and so these ones will be labeled for non-commercial reuse with modification, and there'd just be a little standardized language that you would have to put in to credit the photo source there. There's lots of good stuff here. Wow. Okay. Cool. So and just be. Do your due diligence. If you're going to borrow a picture and put one up, just make sure it's a picture of what you're talking about as best you can find out, etc. It's easy enough to find a picture of a fire, but you know where it's from. Okay, so good. So we've handled the summary blurb. We've handled a picture. We talked about rewriting the story, and you'll get more information on that in your textbook and in class next week. So here comes some additional information that we want to add to reward people who are, have already seen our TV package and they've come to the website hoping to find out more. So this is what I said is a web extra, which by that I mean it's a little bit of extra information related to your main story. But as I said, it might be something that you thought was really interesting that you didn't have a chance to work into the story, or it may be some kind of question that you anticipate that your audience wants answered. They want to know about it. So here's your chance to do, I think it's about 150 words. My goodness, that's probably written a little lower down. So it's not long. It's if it's not in there, I'm going to put it in about 150 words, which is a half page or so if it was double spaced.
Web extra.
Pardon me?
The web extra.
The web extra, yes. So we're talking about an extra story. This is in addition to your main story adapted from your thing. And this sits aside, right? It has a separate headline. It's on if not a separate piece of paper, it's clearly marked off from your main story, all right? It's not integrated. But whenever I say sidebar, people say, well, where do all the Twitter feeds and this, is that where it goes? It's like, yeah. In magazines, yes. In magazines, we'd call it a sidebar, but I've learned not to call it a sidebar anymore because it just confuses people. But that's what it is, yeah. It is a story that is related to your main story, but it sits off on the side. Imagine in an old magazine, it would have like a different color and it would be put over there on the side or something.
So it's like when they have the profile of someone.
Exactly, right.
Sheila's favorite fat-burning food, whatever, off to the side.
Okay, good. I like it. The fat-burning foods. Kyle had a question and then Shannon has something.
That's the 150 extra is on top of the 450? Or
yes, on top. And in fact, next door to it, separate from it. Don't work it into the main story. Main story is just the adaptation of your package, but this is a different thing on the side. And Shannon, did you have?
Format-wise, so are we just compiling these all into like one document, like you write the blurb and then go down a few lines, put in your story, go down a few lines, put in that web extra,
Yeah.
It can all just be straight down, you don't have to format it.
Yeah, and if you want to make my life easy, you can do it in the order that I put it and number it the way I did. That'll be really clear, okay? But in my experience, some people think that the web extra should be incorporated into the main story, and that's not the case. It should be a separate little story. Yeah.
Show me an example.
I actually do have an example, but I'm not sure if it carried over onto this website, but there will be an example linked into the assignment for sure. It's just in the traumatic transfer to Canvas. There's so much, as you all see, anyone who looks ahead sees like these things is in their whatever. So it'll be in there. So you might do a profile of somebody involved, just like Shannon was talking about, or the fat burning recipe if that works. Charts, graphs, or information from online sources. It'll give visual context. So you'll see NBC Interactive doing that. Investigative doing that all the time. JP.
So the extra stories required, but not the other web extras.
The other web extras. I mean, the other thing is that I want you just to give us some interactive features as well. It's all required. It's in there. It's required. So a web extra is a 150-word story, okay? All right? And now this other stuff, provide at least one web interactive feature. That's a slightly different thing. Shannon, hand up.
Okay, yes. So looking through those points, so the profile, the profile of the extra person that's required as well, and then, or is that part of the web? Or is that describing the web extra? That is a potential topic for the web extra. Okay.
So those are suggestions as to typically when someone is providing what I'm calling a web extra, what is it? It is very often a profile or charts, something like that, right?
So those go with number 4, and then there we go.
Right, there we go. I'm just trying to deal with this here. So 5 provided, so this will help clarify that, right? Provide at least one web interactive feature. Now this sounds a whole lot more complicated than it is, all right? One of the great things, I'm sorry, I had to switch out of student view in order to do that. So I know it's kind of pathetic here. It's one thing I don't like about Canvas is that unless I'm in student view, I can't show this whole thing. So web interactive is, obviously the web can do things that neither print nor broadcasting can do, right? You can click and get somewhere, or you can, we can solicit information or some kind of engagement from the audience, and of course everybody's excited about that. So here I'm really asking you, you can't execute this because you're working in Microsoft Word or unless, so if you could, what do you think would be a good web interactive feature to use in your story? So you could do a survey or poll. If you decide to do that, give us some questions that you would ask people. How do you feel about the Sonoma fire? Good or bad? Discussion forums, then, what would the discussion be all about? FAQs are excellent, to provide extra information for folks. You would write those. An interactive game or puzzle. Here, now we're getting really creative. It's like, I don't know, like extinguish the fire game or something as you go from community to community, so on and so forth. I'm not sure. So some of these get to be pretty, just think it up. Yeah. Of course not.
With the little blurbs that some have share on Facebook, share on Twitter, would that count as?
No, that's not very demanding, but those are
It's interactive, though.
It is interactive, but I'd like you to go a little further than that, right? Share this story widget. Doesn't count. Yeah, so look through there. Those are your options. Shannon.
I'm dying from the fire.
Oh yes. Sim firefighter.
Both Twitter and Instagram now have a poll feature, so if you really did want to conduct a poll and then put the graph in, it's super easy now.
Oh, cool.
You just pull it, make a graph in Google Docs.
Oh, okay. If you're not going to be here next week, please email me something about that just so I can share it with people. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Having worked in broadcast and just when the polling the audience thing came in, I always found it just, thank goodness for the web, where it's kind of making this whole strategy of engagement more meaningful by, you can actually get the numbers as to what people's responses are. You can display them back. You can actually use this stuff versus, back in the day in broadcasting, we used to say, so what do you think about Justin Trudeau, or something like that. And then it would just be, well, do we care what you think? Maybe a few people will email the station, and it was like meaningless. But, it was like gratuitous engagement. Versus here, I think, you have a chance to actually learn something about it. There were some examples of, things like You can actually get information out this way too. Anyway, so FAQs. If you're doing a story, for instance, where you might be talking about public security or something like that, some FAQs could be useful, like how to avoid getting your cell phone stolen in public or something like that. You can put that in there too. Cool. Okay, so that's it. Wow. So if I tick it off again in my head, which proves that it's not all that complicated, you need a summary blurb with a headline. You need a photo. You need your main story, your feature story from the TV package adapted for the web. You need a 150-word web extra apart from the 450-word main story. And you need some sort of interactive features that you've thought about. And could simply be relevant links, in which case, if you provide links, don't just provide the link, but also a 1 or 2 sentence summary of what the link is, okay? So that's a pet peeve I have. I get, like 30 assignments and everyone expects me to click, 200 links or something, which I'll never do. So I put it back on you. Just give me a sentence or two as to what's behind that link, So there you go. Now the formatting is, like I said, it could be in a Word doc or whatever.
Extra points
If you go online?
for web page and everything.
I can't really do that because some people don't have the skills. It's not fair to them. If it was like, if everyone universally knew how to do it, I'd say cool, but because then it would just be extra work, but some people don't even have that. Yeah, Shannon?
So as noticed up there, it says required to print or draw what the web page layout.
Yeah, I was just going to erase that actually. Thank you for so required. Required is just a. What we're going to do? Word, Google Doc, or PDF of all. Of the web package. Optional. If you want to, if you have the skills, you can submit this document as a web page in HTML. This is not required. There'll be no instruction about how to do this, which is why I don't make your work late by using web format. Okay, so there you go. I've been through this before. Summary blurb, so there you go. It's up there. Classroom activities. So over the next week, we will talk about, we're looking at your scripts today. We're going to look at news websites to get ideas about how they do this, transforming their TV packages for web extras and stuff. Learn how audiences read websites, so we'll look at some of that research. Think of how to expand your story using additional source and data. Learn about writing effective web headlines. So some of those things are in the textbook too. So stay tuned next week for Tuesday or Thursday streaming sessions where we will be discussing that. Or feel free to join us here in class. Now, the last little piece here, if anybody feels that their story has run its course and they don't feel like taking a next step in their original reporting, sometimes they run into troubles, sometimes they're just bored with it. So I have another option for you, which is to do a piece about the migration of the monarch butterfly. So if you want to abandon your story and just work with other stuff, and here's an opportunity, okay? And so there are the parts for this assignment drawn from other news sources. So there's a TV package script. So this is it on, who's Lester Holt on? CBS, I guess? NBC. Oh, thank you. Okay. So it's an NBC package about the endangered monarch butterfly. They go on an amazing migration where they go from Canada down to Mexico for the winter and then back up to Canada. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. It takes many generations to actually do that. They die and reproduce and continue the migration. So it's pretty stunning. They're beautiful animals. There's a whole range of citizen scientists who are involved in research coordinated out of a few university departments that are tracking the population of monarchs. And they're in real trouble because they need milkweed to eat and survive on the migration. And milkweed is a weed, and people have been eliminating it from their gardens and from, also it's an allergen, and so municipalities tend to eliminate it so that people are less allergic. And what it means is the monarch doesn't have much to eat on these vast migrations, and so their population is in steep decline. That's the subject of this TV package. So you could, if you don't want to work on your own stuff, you could take this package and transform it into a website, a web package. There's information here, additional information that you could add into the TV package. So this has more detail that you might work in there. And for a web extra, the premier researcher in this area is Karen Oberhauser. She's interviewed, you look her up, anything that any major media outlet does on this story, they talk to her. So she's one of the organizers of the, brigades of citizen scientists, and it goes down to like elementary school classes that do this as a science project and stuff and so on. So, she coordinates that and also has the latest information about what's going on with these beautiful butterflies. Yeah?
So if you do this, does the sidebar, the extra thing have to be the profile of Karen?
No, you could look up something else. Yeah. So I say the easy thing to do is to do Karen, but if you wanted to do this, you could do you could do something different. So yeah, go ahead. But it has to be on the Monarch because again, I really have a hard time with plagiarism and stuff at this point because I just can't. I'm not saying anyone here would do that, but it's like I'm kind of defenseless because if everyone did a different story, I wouldn't know if you went and found a web page somewhere and copied it, and I'm not going to sit there and like copy chunks of it and stick it into Google and see if it's like I can't do that. So if you don't do your own original stuff, which we've all been working on for a month and a half, and I know what you're doing, and I know you're doing great work, then you have to do this as an alternative. Nick, you had a hand up?
Yeah, so for the website, are we going to be making like InDesign or a WordPress page for...
If you happen to know how to do it, okay. If you don't, you can just turn it in a Microsoft Word document or a Google Doc or whatever. So it doesn't have to be in an HTML-based format. It could just be in like a regular word process document.
Just make it like that.
Pardon me?
So make it like that through Word.
Yeah, and you don't even have to worry about the layout so much. I mean, that's okay. So this is another option, let me just show you something that was inspiring and interesting to me on this. This is a bit of a. Here we go. Okay. So this I found very interesting when I found it, and we're while we're on the topic of what the web can do for reporting and such. So this is a documentary entirely done with Google Earth, right? So Google Earth, about a year and a half ago, they opened it up. It's free now. Anyone can use it. Before you had to pay for it, and you can. So what you can basically do is create pathways through Google Earth imagery to illustrate a story. I used this on a video that I did for my kids' school. Everybody thought I had drones, but in fact, I just...
mountains of Michoacan in western Mexico in mid-February. This is Sierra Inqua, and Isabel Ramirez stands among the trees. Her orange outfit matches the monarch butterflies surrounding her. You can tell from her voice that she's a butterfly lover.
They are beautiful. It's impossible not to be attracted by monarch butterflies. They provide a feeling of tranquility and peace and wonder.
Ramirez is a geographer at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. She's working to conserve the forests of Michoacan inside the monarch butterfly biosphere reserve to prevent illegal logging for the sake of the trees and the butterflies. because literally millions and millions of monarchs call this sanctuary home in the wintertime.
Maybe around 50 million butterflies around us in this moment.
And that's just in these couple acres. Monarchs coat the ground, the trees, and before long, Ramirez has a couple in her hands.
I think they are small pieces of sunlight.
Such a delicate animal, each one the weight of a paperclip. Now, as we approach the end of February, the peaks of Michoacan start warming up, and the butterflies feel it. Sometimes a whole colony will pick up and settle back down together, literally moving from one location on the mountaintop to another. And by the middle of March, it's time for the monarchs to begin one of the most epic journeys in the animal kingdom.
Their incredible migration is unparalleled.
Karen Oberhauser has studied monarchs for 25 years. She's a biologist at the University of Minnesota. Now, to follow the monarch migration, we're going to fly along with the butterflies. And be sure to watch the timeline in the upper left. Okay, cue the epic journey music.
The males and the females leave the overwintering colonies and fly north through Mexico. They cross the neovolcanic mountain range and cross the mountains on the east side of Mexico and fly up into southern Texas.
The butterflies fan out, covering the southeastern quarter of the U.S., laying eggs as they go.
If you imagine monarchs as kind of this wave of insects that are moving northward and eastward, they're looking for specific kinds of habitat along the way.
Habitat that must include milkweed. It's the only kind of plant that the caterpillars can eat, as well as other nectar sources for the adults. Now, let's pause for a moment here and consider the monarchs laying their little eggs on milkweed. When Oberhauser described it to me, I was reminded just how astonishing that transformation is from egg into adult.
We have this caterpillar that's kind of like a worm. They're this earthbound thing that's kind of squishy and kind of mushy. And then they go through this transformation where it's almost like they die when they get into the chrysalis. So they're in the stage that, from the outside at least, they don't even look alive. And then they transform into this incredibly beautiful organism that throws off the chains of the earth and is able to fly away.
Okay, back to the journey. The butterflies from Mexico live no more than a month after leaving their overwintering mountaintops and laying their eggs. And so it's this next generation, born in the southeastern U.S. in what's called their spring range, that pick up the next chapter of the migration.
Which goes northward into what we call their summer breeding range. So this is everything kind of from a line through the middle of the United States up into southern Canada.
The migration is filled with peril. Butterfly eggs are gobbled down by ants and spiders and wasps. Most animals avoid eating the adult monarchs because they taste bad, but there are a couple types of birds that do find them palatable: the black-headed grosbeak and the black-backed oriole. Then there's bad weather. A drought or a really bad storm can decimate the monarch numbers. But perhaps the biggest threat on their journey these days is habitat destruction. And that habitat consists of milkweed.
The middle of the United States used to be one big prairie, and all of that land was suitable habitat. We now have a patchwork of cities and agricultural fields broken up by completely inappropriate habitat, which would be things like roads and parking lots.
Oberhauser told me that cities aren't necessarily bad for monarchs. Take Minneapolis, where residents have planted milkweed and other butterfly-friendly plants in parks, lawns, and gardens. Yeah. Still, a city means a lot less monarch habitat than before. Agricultural fields used to be okay, with lots of milkweed mingling with the crops. But now, in this age of genetically modified corn and soybeans, farmers spray their fields with herbicides that wipe out the milkweed. All this disrupted habitat makes the going much tougher for the monarchs, and over the last few years, their numbers are down. But there are still many butterflies that do make it, that find milkweed, and that lay more eggs.
They go through 2 or 3 more generations in the northern part of their range. breeding, laying eggs, finding milkweed plants. And then after about August 15th, the butterflies fly south again to the overwintering sites in Mexico.
Okay, so I'm sure you want to check out the rest of that. But what did you think of just the visualization of what's essentially like a radio feature or something?
Help me understand it better.
Oh, good. It helped understand better. Yeah,
I
it's.
thought the music timed with that worm picture zooming in was really funny. I don't know if it was intended to be funny, but it was definitely interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a bit of meta humor in the whole thing. You know, I would think. But it's all, you know, all that aerial imagery is free now, and yeah, you can get a lot closer to ground level than they actually show you there. So, like, I'd say you could get maybe what looks to be like about 150 feet above ground. So, and you could fly over blocks of San Francisco and stuff, and it can be useful if you want to give a sense of movement through. You know, through geography. And here what's great is that you're talking about such large, you know, migration patterns that to be able to zoom out and zoom back in like that, it's a really useful tool, and it's free, and you know, as JP was saying, you can, you know, it's no one's going to take it for a realistic special effect, but it can help people understand a story better. Okay, so that was our audio-visual break. Coming back to the assignment, any thoughts or questions about this? Due on November 14th, in 12 days from now, which is not, by the way, a day that you have to be here, I don't think, but I should check that. When is our next obligatory meetup? Is
16th.
November 16th. Okay, so share and discuss your online web story. So that's the 16th. We'll get it all in, and we'll come back and talk about it. And then I'll get you set up for, on the 16th, things are going to change entirely, because in the last few weeks of this class, we leave news, we leave information, and we get into the world of fictional screenwriting, which some people maybe have been waiting for. I'm not sure. Okay. Cool. Yes, Shannon.
I just want to clarify with the interactive feature. So any interactive feature we do, all we have to do is like write a little blurb describing what it would be, what questions we would ask, or what components we would put in that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And so even if it's a set of links, the links should work. Don't just write pertinent links. You know, the links should work, and they should be described a little bit. Yeah. Hand up, Nick. Yep.
Will that feature you just showed us be linked into like resources or something?
Well, not really, but if you email me, I can send you the link.
Cool.
Yeah, you know, if that's an interest of yours, sure. Definitely.
Oh, not the bugs, just to get a feel of it. And I kind of want to know about the bugs.
Okay, that's very cute. Okay, well, we have a few minutes left to hear some folks' TV package, and we heard a bunch before. Nika, would you like yours? Okay, here we go. And if anybody else would like after, I just
to go after Nika.
Okay, here we go. So remember, this is the TV package. Of course, you had two columns, a video column and an audio column, and take it away, Nika.
With the budget drawing up more and more each year, a thirsty San Francisco Public Library tries once again to fill its coffers. KCSF's Nika Bucko talked with those responsible. With more funding not on the horizon and a few other options, the San Francisco Library has had to settle for this to get more funding: a massive book sale. Oh, all the books are donated. We don't sell library books. In fact, this is as many as we've ever had, I've been told. Ching. However, with only $175,000 raised so far, it's an uphill battle. The wait to buy books here on the last day is 8 minutes when I timed it. Not quite a mad scramble, but people are excited on the last day when the price of all books goes down from $3 to a single dollar. While that may not seem like much in the grand scheme of things, we were reassured that it was the correct step, the quantity of books sold in their massive location would more than make up for it. This location is much better than what we've had in the past. We're all having so many people of all ages come in from all over, and I'm glad we can fit them all. She talked like that. We can only hope it's enough to keep our libraries afloat in these trying times when spending on public services seems to be headed elsewhere, to allegedly more important items. This is Nika Bucko, KCSF News.
All right. Cool. So, first of all, is it true that their budget's constantly being slashed?
It was slashed a while ago, but no, it's not more and more each year. That was a bit of an exaggeration.
It's not in jeopardy, but it does go down.
It does go down each year.
Oh, okay. So, it sounded like it was pretty dire. Maybe that was something that you'd want to rein in, I guess, maybe. The other thing is it in a new location or is it in Fort Mason?
No, I actually found out that woman was wrong.
Okay.
Fort Mason for as long as I can remember.
Right, and it's still in Fort Mason.
I don't know why she told me that, but
But he's not reporting wrong. Technically.
Okay. I mean, I would have checked it out and then maybe not used her. I probably wouldn't have read this in front of everyone. Sorry. Okay.
I completely forgot about how she lied to me.
All right. Now let's dwell on the positives here. Formatting looks very, very good. Other folks, the things that you appreciated about this story?
The gnat sound.
The gnat sound, especially the way.
I forgot to add that in mine.
Sorry, JP, I didn't.
I forgot to add that in mine.
You forgot gnat sound in yours. It's not not obligatory, I guess. But it can certainly provide a sense of place. Shannon and then Shannon.
I really like the tone of the reporter. Seemed very conversational towards the end. Wasn't so I thought it was a good tone.
Okay, great.
Oh, but with the name, is it Nika?
Yes.
I think that might be worth doing a phonetic pronunciation just near the top. Or do you do that with TV, or is that just with the radio?
No, you'd have, they're called pronouncers, but so.
I forgot people can't pronounce my own name. So.
Yes, but considering Nika's he's a staff reporter, and this is probably just written for, maybe you might have a sub-anchor who wouldn't know how to say your name. So it's not unreasonable, and as a general rule, if you put a name in there which is unfamiliar that someone might have trouble pronouncing, a pronouncer is really appreciated. So I guess so. Yeah, maybe you'll have a different screen name too, I don't know.
I think it's concise, but all right.
Okay, Shannon Cole.
I've seen 2-column scripts where everything's it's like a table, so there's different boxes. So on the left where it says on cam and where it says anchor, then there's a line for the next shot. Is this the preferred way, or to put it in boxes so that it's
I don't have a preference. I find it easier that each segment is in a row of a table, so it would produce the kind of thing you're talking about, Shannon. So there'd be a line running between each. But as long as stuff lines up correctly, then that's okay. Was this like a 2-column format of the page?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I find that harder to work with, just to get things to line up properly. So but there's no right or wrong way, if you ask me.
I would have preferred that too, if I looked into it.
Okay, in class I did demo, at least in Word, how to insert a table, and then with, it's basically just a 2-column table and as many rows as you feel are necessary, and then just plug it in that way.
Okay.
This is a little more difficult, I find, but it works out fine here. We can see things lining up.
Yeah, I looked at this and went, how did that even happen? How is that so well lined up?
Lots of return, and just
I pressed that wrong.
Yeah, that's no problem. Okay, well, I think we just have time for Nick, and then we'll call it a day. Sorry I didn't have time to read more of yours. What can we do? You can come back next class if you want. We can read those out to you together next class. How about that? I just felt it was really important to explain the assignment as well as I could because there's a lot of pieces there. None of the pieces are difficult, but the web package has a lot of bits and pieces associated. Okay, here we go. We can't just do it that way. We'll do it this way. Okay, Nick, take it away.
All right, can you go up? Thank you. Local wrestling promotion All Pro Wrestling hosted its Jim Morris fundraising event last week for Jefferson High School in Daly City. But amongst all the carnage and mayhem, a story of homecoming was told that night. Nicholas Winstead has a story. All Pro Wrestling, a local independent wrestling staple in Northern California, bringing in big names like John Morrison, Rey Mysterio, Joey Ryan, Cody Rhodes, and others. But they are also known for their homegrown talent, and one talent makes his return to his old high school. It felt good ever since I graduated from here. I dreamt of coming back here and wrestling. It's a dream come true to come back. Will Cuevas, pro wrestler and former Marine, thank you. comes back to his old high school, Jefferson High, to battle against an opponent larger than him, Sin, and his posse, Papa Esco, and manager Caesar B. Black. During the match, Will wowed the crowd by leaving the ring and jumping off the gym balcony, wiping them all out.
Wow.
The same balcony I jumped off tonight, I jumped off when I was in high school and ran to the middle of the gym and did my Shawn Michaels pose during a big rally at high school. Will, who was raised in all different places across NorCal, but he always knew what he wanted to be when he grew up. I watched wrestling since I was a kid, but the moment which made me want to become a wrestler was when I was sitting in the second row at the 1998 Royal Rumble. I watched the casket match between Shawn Michaels and Undertaker and knew then. Will, like one of his heroes, his boyhood dream had come true with hours of hard work, grit, and I should have said years of hard work, grit, and determination. I talked to a young fan who was at the event who was a big fan of the Moneymaker. It was really cool to see Will dive off of the balcony and to see him come back to Jefferson High. He's been doing everything lately, wrestling Pentagon and Zack Sabre Jr., and he just got a tryout at NXT, so hope he gets picked up soon. The crowd was amazing. They were just on fire the entire night. I thank everyone for their support.
Awesome. Nick, well, Carmen wants to say something? Yeah.
The grammar was a little off, a lot of run-on sentences, a lot of the VO was too long of sentences where it's like an anchor would run out of breath.
Yeah.
So not that they all have to be short sentences, but it just seems the sentence seems a little poorly organized.
Gotcha.
They're so chunky. There's so much information in them.
And there's missing periods and a lot of run-ons.
So first I would say this is way better organized than the same story in the radio feature. I think you really knocked this into shape. And I will also say I noted what Carmen did. And in fact, I saw a kind of a pattern there, which would be easy enough to fix. In fact, is just look through your VOs, and you very often start out with a sentence that has a subject, and it turns into a run-on sentence without a verb associated with a first subject. So like Will Cuevas, pro wrestler and former Marine, came back to his old high school, Jefferson High, to battle against an opponent larger than him, Sin and his posse. And then maybe put a period there. The sentence is way too long. During the match, Will wowed the crowd by leaving the ring and jumping off the gym balcony, wiping out Sin and his posse or whatever. So it would be pretty easy to fix this. And so I would say that the pattern to avoid is making long run-on sentences. So what you do is, again, read them back just like you did and look through it and say, okay, this first sentence, the subject is Will Cuevas. What is Will Cuevas doing? Oh, he's coming back to his old high school, Jefferson High. Then maybe put a period and then say, okay, what's he doing there? Well, he's going to battle against his opponent, who's along with so-and-so and so-and-so. So, just once you've written it out, again, this is a way improved version, just go through all your VOs and find the the full sentences within each. Because right now, each one of them is 2, maybe 3 sentences kind of run together. And so that's something you want to work on. But again, kudos because it went way better. And by the way, you needed a lockout at the end too. Other folks, maybe we could go to you because we heard so much from you.
Just kidding. Yeah, maybe if you're showing it on video, you don't really have to tell it in the scripts too much because it's kind of obvious. Like the part where it talks about him jumping off the ropes and taking down the people, it shows it on the left there. It says it's on the left. So it's kind of play by play instead of reporting.
Good point. I was listening more to the sentences and looking less at the video, but that's a good point too. Okay, Nika, last word for today.
I was gonna say, some of the word usage was a little iffy, like carnage, carnage and mayhem sound a little bad. Mayhem's good, but carnage makes me think of actual deadly violence.
Considering what's going on in the news lately.
And I don't know, NorCal sounded a bit too casual.
Yeah.
Perhaps, yeah.
Other than that, I really liked it.
Easy enough to say Northern California. And, as fun as it is to use, what did I call your language at one point? I said it was florid. It was florid. And you tamed the floridity a big deal, but there's still a couple of extra. Thank you, Nick. It was awesome. Can I have everybody's little thing? And don't forget to sign your name to the attendance if you were